My friends, today I want to speak to you about something that we all face, anger. It's a natural human emotion, one that we all experience from time to time. But what if I told you that as followers of Christ, we have the power within us to never be angry or bothered by anyone? What if you could walk through life with a heart of peace, undisturbed by the actions or words of others? The Bible teaches us to live a life of patience, kindness, and self-retreat. These are not just ideals we hope to attain, but principles we are called to live by every single day. When we understand the power of Christ within us, we realize that we have the ability to respond to every situation, no matter how challenging, with a spirit of grace and composure. Anger and frustration are often the result of feeling attacked, disrespected, or misunderstood. But we must remember that God is our defender, and He is the one who judges. When we put our trust in Him, we begin to see others through His eyes of compassion, forgiveness, and love. When we do this, we find that the things that once triggered us no longer have the same hold on our hearts. As we look at the life of Jesus, we see a model of perfect peace in the face of opposition. He was ridiculed, betrayed, and attacked, yet He never responded with anger. His calmness was not a sign of weakness, but a powerful testimony of His trust in God's plan. And it's through that same trust that we too can live with peace in our hearts, no matter what others do or say. So I want to encourage you today, you have the choice. You have the ability to choose peace over anger, to choose forgiveness over bitterness, and to choose love over frustration. Let's learn to rest in the assurance that God is in control, and let His peace guard our hearts and minds. Through His strength, we can truly live a life that is untouched by the anger and offenses of this world. Understanding your triggers is the first step in gaining control over your anger. Often, we find ourselves getting upset in certain situations or with specific people, but we don't always take the time to reflect on why those moments have such an intense effect on us. Triggers can be subtle, coming from something as simple as a comment or an action that doesn't seem significant to others but stirs up a storm within us. It's important to recognize these moments as opportunities for self-awareness and growth rather than just responding impulsively. The key to understanding your triggers is to pause and reflect. When you feel that familiar surge of anger rising within you, instead of immediately reacting, take a moment to ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? What is it about the situation or person that's causing you to feel upset? Is it the words being said, the way someone treats you? Perhaps it's the tone of voice or the assumption that your needs or feelings are being dismissed. Once you start identifying these triggers, you begin to see patterns in your emotional responses. This awareness empowers you to respond more mindfully in the future. It's also important to explore the deeper reasons behind these reactions. Sometimes our triggers are rooted in past experiences or unresolved emotions. Perhaps an interaction with a colleague reminds you of a time in your life when you felt overlooked or disrespected. Maybe an encounter with a family member stirs up old wounds from childhood. These triggers are often connected to our unmet needs, insecurities, or past hurts that haven't yet been healed. Understanding that your anger may stem from a deeper emotional place allows you to approach your responses with more compassion for yourself and others. As you gain insight into your triggers, it becomes easier to recognize the physical signs of anger before it escalates. When you're aware of what's happening inside your body, like clenched fists, shallow breathing, or a tight chest, you can catch yourself in the moment. Instead of allowing anger to take over, you can pause, breathe, and choose a more constructive way to deal with the situation. By learning to recognize the early warning signs, you take away the element of surprise, making it easier to diffuse your anger before it gets out of control. Another aspect of understanding your triggers is examining how your values play into your emotional responses. Often we get upset when we feel our values are being challenged or violated. For example, if you value honesty and integrity, You may feel angered when someone lies to you. If you value respect, being interrupted or talked over can provoke a strong reaction. By identifying what's at stake for you in these moments, you can better understand the underlying cause of your anger. This realization helps you address the situation more calmly and assertively instead of letting anger dictate your actions. Recognizing your triggers also allows you to set healthier boundaries. When you know what makes you angry, you can take steps to avoid or limit exposure to those situations whenever possible. For example, if certain types of conversations at work tend to frustrate you, you can prepare yourself ahead of time or even avoid them altogether if they're unnecessary. Understanding your triggers empowers you to take proactive steps to protect your emotional well-being without feeling powerless in the face of other people's actions or circumstances. However, understanding your triggers doesn't mean avoiding all situations that make you uncomfortable. It means recognizing when your emotions are being stirred and learning how to manage them with grace. It's about being mindful of your emotional state and knowing when to step back, breathe, and regroup before you react. Over time, as you continue to reflect on and understand your triggers, you'll find that your responses become less reactive and more intentional. This shift allows you to maintain your peace of mind even in challenging circumstances. Finally, once you've understood your triggers, you'll notice that they no longer have the same power over you. While you might still feel upset in certain situations, you'll have a clearer understanding of why it's happening and what you need to do to manage it. Instead of being at the mercy of your emotions, you'll have the tools to respond with wisdom and self-control. This understanding not only helps you gain mastery over your anger, but also fosters a greater sense of peace and emotional freedom. In life, we often find ourselves in situations where others' actions or words trigger strong emotional reactions within us. It's easy to believe that our emotions are entirely dependent on what others do, but the truth is, we have the power to choose how we respond. While we cannot control the behavior or attitudes of those around us, we can control how we react to them. Recognizing this gives us an incredible sense of freedom. No longer are we at the mercy of other people's behavior. Instead, we become active participants in how we engage with the world around us. Choosing your response begins with self-awareness. The moment someone behaves in a way that might upset you, take a step back and check in with yourself. What emotions are rising within you? Are you feeling defensive, angry, frustrated, or hurt? Instead of reacting immediately, give yourself permission to pause and reflect. In that space, you have the opportunity to make a conscious decision about how you want to handle the situation. It's in these moments of pause that you reclaim your power, allowing your response to be rooted in wisdom and intention rather than impulse. When you recognize that you are in control of your response, it becomes easier to let go of the desire to change others. So often we become frustrated with others because we want them to act or think in a way that aligns with our expectations. But the truth is, we cannot change anyone but ourselves. When we accept this fact, we free ourselves from the burden of trying to control others and instead focus on mastering our own emotions. This shift in perspective allows us to respond with clarity and calmness instead of frustration and reactivity. Choosing your response also means taking responsibility for your emotions. It's easy to blame others for how we feel, but in reality, our feelings are our own. When we place the blame for our emotions on someone else, we relinquish control over how we process those feelings. By taking ownership of our reactions, we empower ourselves to choose responses that align with our values rather than letting anger or hurt drive our actions. This responsibility is a vital part of emotional maturity, and it's through this process that we grow stronger in our ability to respond thoughtfully and respectfully. One of the most powerful tools in choosing your response is practicing emotional regulation. Emotions are natural, but they don't have to govern our actions. When we feel triggered, we can train ourselves to pause, breathe, and choose how to proceed. This might mean taking a few deep breaths to calm your mind before responding, or walking away from a situation to gain perspective. By building the habit of emotional regulation, we create space between our emotional reaction and our response. In that space, we can act with intention, making decisions that reflect who we truly want to be, rather than reacting out of hurt or frustration. Choosing your response also means cultivating empathy. Often when others act in ways that upset us, it's because they themselves are dealing with their own struggles, fears, or pain. By considering the other person's perspective, we can shift our response from one of defensiveness to one of understanding. This doesn't mean excusing harmful behavior, but it does mean recognizing that people's actions are often a reflection of their internal battles. When we respond with empathy, we diffuse the power of anger and allow ourselves to approach the situation with compassion instead of hostility. The power of choosing your response is also evident in how we manage conflict. When disagreements arise, we can choose to engage in a way that is respectful and productive, or we can choose to escalate the situation, responding with calmness, clarity, and a focus on resolution helps us avoid unnecessary tension and fosters healthier relationships. By remaining grounded in our values and choosing our response, we not only protect our own peace of mind, but also create an environment where others feel respected and heard. Finally, when we consistently choose our responses rather than react out of habit or emotion, we develop a deeper sense of inner peace. We stop allowing external circumstances to dictate our emotional state, and instead we learn to be steady in the face of life's challenges. This kind of emotional resilience doesn't happen overnight, but with practice, we become less easily rattled by the actions of others. We learn that our peace is not dependent on others' behavior, but on how we choose to respond to them. And in this space, we find true freedom and emotional strength. Forgiveness is one of the most powerful tools we have for emotional healing. Holding on to past hurts and grievances can weigh us down, blocking our ability to experience peace and joy in the present. The longer we hold on to anger, bitterness, or resentment, the more it affects our mental, emotional, and even physical health. Forgiveness, however, isn't about excusing what someone else did. It's about freeing ourselves from the chains of past hurts. When we forgive, we release the power that those hurts have over us, making room for healing and peace. It's important to understand that forgiveness is a choice, not a feeling. Many people believe that they must feel forgiving before they can act on it, but the truth is forgiveness is often an act of will before it's an act of emotion. We might not feel ready to forgive, and we might still feel the sting of what happened, but choosing to forgive is an intentional decision to stop allowing those past actions to control our present. It's about deciding that we no longer want to carry that burden. Once we make the choice, the emotional healing process can begin. Forgiveness doesn't mean that we forget what happened or that we allow the other person to continue hurting us. It means that we stop letting the past define our future. By forgiving, we release ourselves from the cycle of anger and pain that keeps us tethered to negative experiences. It's a way of reclaiming our power and taking control of our emotional well-being. When we forgive, we no longer allow the actions of others to dictate how we feel. Instead, we free ourselves to move forward with grace and peace. Peace and wholeness are one of the most profound aspects of forgiveness is that it allows us to let go of the need for justice or revenge. It's human nature to want to see wrongdoers pay for their actions, but the act of forgiveness shifts our perspective. We stop focusing on the wrong done to us and begin to focus on our own healing and growth. Forgiveness allows us to surrender the desire for retribution and trust that God or the universe will bring justice in its own time. In doing so, we are able to find peace within ourselves regardless of what has been done to us. The power of forgiveness is transformative because it not only frees us from anger, but it also opens the door to compassion and understanding. When we hold on to grudges, we tend to dehumanize the person who hurt us. We view them through the lens of their wrongdoing rather than seeing them as complex individuals who, like all of us, make mistakes. Forgiveness allows us to see the humanity in others, even when they've wronged us. It allows us to empathize with their flaws, recognize their struggles, and extend the grace we would want for ourselves. Another reason forgiveness is so powerful is that it enables us to cultivate inner peace. When we carry the weight of past hurts, we create an internal conflict within ourselves. We're torn between holding on to the anger and desiring peace. This inner tension can lead to stress, anxiety, and a lack of emotional clarity. But when we forgive, we release that tension. We choose to let go of the emotional burden, and in doing so, we create space for peace to enter. Forgiveness clears the emotional clutter, allowing us to experience a greater sense of calm and contentment. Forgiveness is not something that happens overnight. It's a process that requires time, patience, and self-compassion. There may be moments when we feel like we haven't fully forgiven, and that's okay. It's important to be gentle with ourselves in the process. Some hurts run deep, and healing takes time. However, every step we take toward forgiveness, whether it's acknowledging our pain, releasing our anger, or offering grace, moves us closer to freedom. As we continue to choose forgiveness, we gradually find that it becomes easier to let go and our hearts grow lighter. Ultimately, forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves. It doesn't change what happened or raise the pain, but it allows us to release the hold that past events have over our present. It frees us from the anger, resentment, and fear that can keep us stuck in the past. When we forgive, we open ourselves up to healing, growth, and new possibilities. We choose peace over bitterness, love over hate, and freedom over captivity. Forgiveness is the path to emotional freedom and the key to living a life filled with peace, joy, and grace. In life, it's easy to get caught up in the small, day-to-day irritations that can distract us from our bigger purpose. We encounter things that don't go as planned, disagreements with people, or minor obstacles that seem to have the power to derail us. These small annoyances, while sometimes significant in the moment, don't define us or determine the course of our lives. The key to staying on track is to keep our eyes focused on the bigger picture, the ultimate purpose and goals we're working toward. When we focus on what truly matters, these minor disruptions become just blips on the radar, not the end of our journey. One of the most effective ways to keep your focus on the bigger picture is to remind yourself regularly of your long-term goals. What is it that you're truly working toward? What is the vision you have for your life? Whether it's advancing in your career, improving your relationships, or achieving a personal goal, reconnecting with your why gives you a sense of clarity and direction. It acts as a compass that guides you back to your true path whenever distractions arise. When you know your purpose, small annoyances begin to lose their power to upset you. It's also important to remember that every big achievement is made up of small, incremental steps. Often we get frustrated when things don't move as quickly as we want or when unexpected setbacks occur. But these obstacles don't mean we're off course. They're simply part of the process. The most successful people in life didn't reach their goals without facing challenges along the way. What set them apart was their ability to stay focused, remain persistent, and continue moving forward no matter the bumps in the road. By keeping your eyes on the bigger picture, you remind yourself that every challenge is just one step closer to achieving your dreams. Small annoyances can also come from other people's behavior. It's easy to get frustrated when others don't meet our expectations or when they act in ways that are inconsiderate or hurtful. However, letting these interactions consume our energy only takes us further away from our goals. It's essential to remember that people will always be unpredictable, and their actions are beyond our control. What we can control is how we respond. By choosing not to engage in drama or let negativity sway us, we preserve our energy for the things that truly matter. We can choose to be unaffected by the actions of others and instead direct that energy toward the pursuit of our bigger goals. Keeping your eyes on the bigger picture also involves letting go of perfectionism. Sometimes we get caught up in trying to make everything perfect, believing that we can't move forward until everything is just right. This mindset often leads to frustration and procrastination because perfection is an illusion. The truth is, progress is made by taking imperfect steps forward, learning along the way and adapting as we go. When we release the need for everything to be perfect and focus on the bigger picture, we allow ourselves to make mistakes, grow, and continue moving toward our goals with resilience. Another way to stay focused on the bigger picture is to set clear boundaries. It's important to protect your time and energy so that you can direct them toward your long-term goals. Sometimes people or situations can pull us in directions that don't align with our purpose. Whether it's taking on too many tasks, getting involved in unnecessary drama, or being distracted by temporary pleasures, these distractions can easily lead us away from our bigger picture. By setting clear boundaries and saying no to things that don't serve your purpose, you create space for the things that truly matter and move you closer to your goals. Staying focused on the bigger picture also requires cultivating patience. The road to achieving your goals is rarely straight or smooth, and progress may be slow at times. However, understanding that it takes time and persistence to create lasting change helps you stay motivated through the ups and downs. The process may not always be immediate, but as long as you keep taking steps forward, you are making progress. Trust that the work you're doing now, even if it feels small or insignificant, is building the foundation for the success that will come later. Lastly, remembering the bigger picture means celebrating small wins along the way. While it's important to keep moving toward the bigger goals, it's just as important to acknowledge and appreciate the progress you've made. Every step forward is a victory, no matter how small it may seem. When you take time to celebrate these milestones, it reminds you that the path you're on is worth it. It boosts your motivation, reinforces your commitment, and makes the journey toward your goals feel more fulfilling. By keeping your eyes on the bigger picture and celebrating each win, you make the pursuit of your goals an ongoing source of joy and satisfaction. Emotional awareness is one of the most powerful tools you can develop in life. Often, we react impulsively to situations without truly understanding the emotions that are driving our actions. By tuning into your emotions early, you can begin to identify patterns and recognize when certain feelings are rising. The more you understand your emotional triggers, the better equipped you are to manage them before they escalate. This self-awareness doesn't mean suppressing your emotions or pretending they don't exist. Rather, it's about recognizing and understanding them in a way that gives you control over how you respond. The key to emotional awareness is noticing the small cues your body gives you. When emotions start to surface, your body often sends signals: tightness in your chest, tension in your shoulders, a quickened heartbeat, or shallow breathing. These physical signs are your body's way of alerting you that an emotional reaction is beginning. By learning to recognize these early signs, you can stop and check in with yourself before your emotions take over. This pause allows you to assess what you're feeling, why you're feeling it, and how best to respond in a way that aligns with your values, rather than reacting impulsively. When you practice emotional awareness, you can also begin to separate your feelings from your action. It's easy to confuse the two, but the ability to distinguish between them gives you more control. You may feel anger, frustration, or sadness, but those emotions don't have to dictate how you behave. Instead of reacting automatically, you can take a moment to breathe, reflect, and choose a response that serves your long-term goals and emotional health. By recognizing your emotions without judgment, you allow yourself the space to process them and choose your next steps consciously. One of the most effective ways to regain control over your emotions is through calming techniques. These techniques can help you ground yourself, especially in moments when you feel overwhelmed or triggered. Deep breathing exercises are a powerful tool in calming the mind and body. Slow, deep breaths signal to your nervous system that it's time to relax and create space for clarity. When practiced regularly, deep breathing can reduce stress and help you feel more centered in moments of emotional intensity. By making deep breathing a habit, you can quickly shift your focus and regain control when emotions begin to rise. Another helpful technique is mindfulness meditation, which helps you observe your thoughts and emotions without getting caught up in them. In moments of emotional overwhelm, mindfulness allows you to detach from the intensity of the feeling and observe it from a place of curiosity. Rather than reacting or suppressing, mindfulness encourages you to simply notice the emotion, acknowledge its presence, and let it pass. By practicing mindfulness regularly, you train your mind to remain calm and focused, even in the most challenging situations. Developing emotional awareness also means embracing the idea of emotional regulation. It's not just about noticing your emotions, but also learning how to manage them effectively. This involves finding healthy outlets for your feelings, such as journaling, exercising, or talking with someone you trust. It's important to recognize that emotions like anger or sadness are natural, but how you choose to express them can make a huge difference in the outcome. Emotional regulation gives you the tools to express your feelings in ways that are constructive rather than destructive, allowing you to preserve your relationships and well-being. In challenging situations, it's important to remember that emotional awareness isn't about suppressing or ignoring your feelings. It's about honoring them and choosing how you respond. If you feel angry, frustrated, or anxious, it's okay to feel those things. What matters is how you process those emotions and whether you choose to act on them impulsively or with intentionality. By cultivating emotional awareness, you empower yourself to make decisions that are rooted in your values and your greater goals, rather than simply reacting in the heat of the moment. Lastly, emotional awareness is an ongoing practice. The more you work on tuning into your emotions, the more natural it becomes to respond in a way that is calm, thoughtful, and in alignment with your true self. It takes time and patience, but with each experience, you strengthen your emotional resilience. By continuing to practice emotional awareness, you'll find that you can navigate difficult moments with more ease and clarity, and your relationships and overall well-being will greatly improve as a result. In times of frustration and anger, it can be easy to rely on our own strength to navigate the situation. However, as human beings, we are limited in our capacity to manage overwhelming emotions. When we lean on God's strength, we tap into an infinite source of power, peace, and patience that surpasses our own. Trusting in God's ability to provide us with the inner calm we need allows us to face difficult moments without being consumed by negative emotion. Instead of reacting impulsively, we can rely on His presence to guide us toward a peaceful response even when circumstances feel beyond our control. One of the most powerful things we can do when faced with anger or frustration is to invite God into our hearts and minds. By praying for His peace, we surrender our anger and the desire for retaliation. This act of surrender shifts our focus away from the situation at hand and redirects our attention to God's comforting presence. His love and peace are always available to us, but it's up to us to choose to open our hearts and allow Him to transform our emotional responses. When we invite God into our struggles, we find that His strength is greater than our own, and we are better able to respond with grace and understanding. God's guidance can also teach us to respond with love instead of anger. The Bible is filled with teachings about forgiveness, patience, and kindness, qualities that are essential for maintaining peace in our relationships. In moments when we feel hurt or wronged, it can be tempting to react with anger or bitterness. But God calls us to rise above those emotions. By trusting in His ability to guide us, we can reflect His love in our responses. This doesn't mean that we condone wrong behavior, but rather that we choose to rise above the hurt and respond in a way that reflects God's heart for compassion and healing. When we lean on God's strength, we also gain the patience needed to wait for His timing. Sometimes in the heat of the moment, it's difficult to remain patient and composed, but patience is a fruit of the Spirit. Through God's strength, we can endure difficult situations without becoming reactive. Instead of acting out of frustration or trying to control the situation, we learn to trust that God has a plan for us and His timing is always perfect. With patience, we allow God to work in us and through us, and we find peace in the knowledge that He is in control, even when we feel powerless. God also provides us with wisdom to discern how best to respond in each situation. In moments of anger or frustration, it's easy to be consumed by our emotions and make decisions based on those feelings. However, when we seek God's wisdom through prayer and reflection, we gain clarity and understanding. He helps us see beyond the immediate situation and understand how our response can align with His will. His guidance allows us to choose words and actions that promote healing, understanding, and unity rather than division and conflict. Another aspect of leaning on God's strength is the peace that comes from knowing we don't have to face challenges alone. God promises to be with us through every trial, providing us with the strength to endure and the peace to remain calm. When we trust in His presence, we are reminded that we are not fighting our battles in isolation. God's peace fills us, helping us to remain grounded in His love rather than being swept away by the turmoil around us. This peace isn't the absence of conflict, but the ability to remain anchored in His presence despite the storm. God's love is the ultimate source of healing for our hearts. When we allow Him to fill us with His love, it transforms the way we view others and respond to difficult situations. Instead of seeing people as obstacles or sources of frustration, we begin to see them through God's eyes. With compassion and understanding, His love empowers us to let go of resentment and bitterness, replacing them with forgiveness and grace. By leaning on God's love, we can respond to others with a heart full of compassion, even when they don't deserve it. This kind of love has the power to change relationships and bring healing to our hearts. Lastly, relying on God's strength helps us to break free from the cycle of anger and frustration that can trap us. When we lean on His strength, we are reminded that we are not defined by our emotions or circumstances. We are defined by His love for us, and our responses can reflect that love instead of being governed by our anger or hurt. In this way, leaning on God's strength is not just about reacting differently, it's about allowing Him to transform our hearts and minds so that we can live in greater freedom, peace, and love. Through his strength, we learn to break free from the bondage of negative emotions and embrace a life of grace and peace.